Hi, everybody. This is Janice Masters, the Shaman Mama from janicemasters.com. And this is kind of fun because I'm doing this Facebook Live from my laptop for the first time. I've always had to do it from my phone, and a friend of mine who's a video expert, Lou Bortoni, posted the other day that you can do this from your laptop in Chrome, and I am. So hoping that everything is coming through, both the video and the audio. And you can take a little look around my office. I've got all my goodies on my bookshelves and books, and some of my artwork over here behind me, and getting ready to do some more painting. I haven't done much in a while, and I really love the classes that I take with my online intuitive painting teacher, Shiloh. So we'll see what. Hi, Joan. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. Can you hear everything okay? Is the audio and the video coming through fine from the laptop? It's the first time I've done it from the laptop rather than the phone. So it's obviously much more convenient. I don't have to mess with a tripod and all kinds of things. So hoping that it is. A couple of people submitted some questions, and so I'll address those later. But, oh, good. That's so good to know because, wow, this is just so much easier. I love it. It's really funny because the camera is broadcasting me the other way around. This is my right side. This is my left side. And it's just kind of cockeyed. Anyway, so we're going to talk today, because I love this topic of shadow. We're going to talk about how shadow confuses our miracle attracting vibe. And we're going to take a look at how that happens and what to do about it. Because when we're unaware of shadow coming up and muddying the water, there's nothing we can do about it. We're just kind of lost, and we feel stymied, and we feel stuck. A lot of stuckness is about when shadow comes up and we're confronted with it unconsciously. And it's basically like our energy hits a dam and it's not going to go anyplace. So it creates a situation in which we're partly aligned with our intention to create a miracle and partly in opposition to it. And I'll talk in a minute about the polarity principle, which will explain that more completely. But you know, this shadow work is so juicy because honestly it affects every single area of our lives. There's an old saying about shadow: if you spot it, you got it. Have you heard that one? And basically what it means is any number of things can happen. Somebody can see, let's just say you're in a supermarket and you see a mom yelling at her kids. Now, somebody could see that and, given their history, just not get triggered by it, think, oh, that's too bad, but not really get emotionally triggered by it. Somebody else could see that same scenario unfold in a grocery store with a mom yelling at her kids and get massively triggered emotionally about it, okay? So that's the if you spot it, you got it, because the person who spots it and gets triggered by it has that as a shadow aspect. And it's like that beach ball that Debbie Ford talks about, holding that beach ball down, holding it down, and then suddenly something triggers it, and wham, it's up and in your face. So for me, one of the things that is a shadow, well, let me back up a second. The dead giveaway for me is that I get angry and resentful about certain things, okay? If I'm going to look at the thing that is the trickiest for me right now, it's about food and exercise equals weight loss. Okay, that is the conventional wisdom, isn't it? Pay attention to what you eat, pay attention to how you exercise, you will lose weight. Okay. The fact is that there's judgment and there's criticism that puts me in resistance to that, because my higher self knows that, okay, look, on a practical level, sure, it's about food and exercise, but on a higher consciousness level, It's about consciousness, and it's about not being in resistance to the shadow part of me. Okay? So I'm gonna go back to something I was going to open with, and I kind of forgot about that, but it fits perfectly here. The question that I was going to open with is, what aren't you? Okay, once we decide what I'm not, that's going to go into our shadow closet. So if years ago, because my father had judgments about women who were what he considered to be overweight or fat, that dreaded F word, and he would say critical things about them. And then my ex-husband, whom I was married to for 14 years, also had judgments about women he considered to be overweight or fat. Guess what I decided I'm not? And I'm not ever going to be. Can you guess? Fat. I'm not fat. I'm never going to be fat. Well, guess what? When that goes into the shadow closet, guess what gets expressed? Outside of my conscious control. Now, Joan, you know me well enough to know I don't want to be fat. But guess what? I am. I am. And over the years that I have decided that I'm not going to be fat, and I'm going to do everything I can to get smaller and to lose weight and to release weight and to exercise and to eat this diet and this way of eating and that way of eating, guess what happened? Shadow kept driving the bus. And this is a very graphic representation of the kind of control that shadow takes unconsciously. The very thing I decided I'm not that, shadow said, oh, excuse me, girlie, but guess what? Yeah, you are. And I'm very powerful because you have pushed me so far into the closet, and I'm so energized, and I'm going to express it so that you see it. Okay? For someone else, it might be around money. For somebody else, it might be around family relationships. For somebody else, it might be around creativity, or around work, or around a primary relationship. There are plenty of areas in my life that I have manifested exactly what I want. And then there are a couple that not so much. So if I look at how to not resist the thing that creates friction and resistance to me moving toward my miracle, I have to meet it with love. So if I look at, I'm going to stay with my example, if I look at hungry as something bad, if I look at it as being greedy for food, guess where that's going to go? It's going to go into the shadow closet. If I look at forgiveness as something bad because it's about being weak, and if you're strong, you don't forgive, you hold that resentment, and you remember that you're right and they're wrong. Okay, all of this stuff that we offer resistance to goes into the shadow closet. So how can we take the disowned part of ourselves that gets in the way? Oh, hi. Hi, Palma. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. I told Joan that I'm doing this from my laptop, so it's a little different. And it's actually much nicer because I've got a really wide screen and I can see your comments coming up. And so I think this is going to work out very nicely. Yeah, shadow drives the bus. That's exactly right. And here's the thing that's even funnier about that is that we think we're driving the bus. But in fact, the subconscious is always overriding that. So how do we make the disowned shadow parts of us more fun? What if we approach the things that we have decided are shadow, and we, just for a minute, because we can go back to resisting if we want to, but just for a minute, we drop our resistance to it. So let's reframe a couple of things. So let's take the shadow part that most people would hide about being messy. Okay? Now, some people aren't going to hide that they're messy, but let's just say that it's a shadow part. Okay? How can we reframe messy? What is a gift in messiness that would allow us to kind of laugh at ourselves and say, oh, well, here's the kind of nice thing about being a little messy, or even a lot messy. Got any take on that? If you've decided that messy is something that you're not, because the question I asked Palma was, what aren't you? Because that will lead us directly into what has been thrown into your shadow closet. Okay, so we could look at messy. What's the gift in messy? We could look at greedy. What's the gift in greedy? We could look at, Debbie Ford uses a great example in her book of a guy named Michael who said, one thing I'm not is an idiot. And so Debbie, in her skillful way, Debbie takes him through this process of finally getting to the place where he acknowledges, I am everything. And she says, well, Michael, if you are everything, then you are an idiot too, aren't you? And he just started laughing, and his wife started laughing. Okay, because we can't refute the fact that we are everything. We encompass everything. We have the capability in us for everything possible within the human experience. And so when we try to shut these things out, it's like it's like pedaling really fast on your bicycle while you're putting on the handbrakes. Okay? You're pedaling as fast as you can toward manifesting your miracle. But if at the same time your shadow aspects are squeezing on the handbrakes, it's going to slow you down, and you might not ever get there. Might not ever get there. So how about this one, the last one? What if something you're not is dead? And that's figurative, obviously. I mean, we know literally you're not dead, or you wouldn't be here, right? But how about figuratively? You know, the statement that I'm not dead. Is there any kind of a gift in being dead? What could the gift in being dead be? I wonder. You don't feel very much. You're not responsible for anything. You don't have to be working hard at anything, right? So just the idea that we can reframe those parts of us that we have declared shadow, that slow us down toward manifesting our miracle. And I wonder, my friend and mentor, Vicky Dello Gioio, does a wonderful description in her book of how to, the dynamic of recognizing that we are in a victimhood space and asking ourselves, as that victim identity causes our energy to spiral downward into more and more, ain't it awful, and it's all their fault, and poor me, is there a point at which we can get a hold of that, and we can make a conscious decision, and we can allow that spiral to begin to move in an upward direction, you know, into releasing energy, releasing creativity, releasing love, abundance, and helping us to be in alignment with the things that we really want. So we could do a couple of what ifs here. What if I embrace all of myself? What if I love my shadow parts? You don't have to commit to anything. Is that in reference to being dead, Joan? I'm assuming it is. Yeah, you don't have to commit to anything. You know, life just kind of happens, and you're just kind of there, and you're just not really engaged. And so it's really safe, isn't it? It's safe. It might be kind of a cozy place. Yeah. There's a part of us that can be in that feeling dead place when we're in grief, but that's meant to be temporary. Yes, right. You don't have to commit to anything. That's a good thing about being dead. So yeah, we can sometimes fall into that deadness. I've experienced it when each of my parents died. Palma, maybe you did too when you lost your husband. But that's meant to be transitory. That's not meant to be, and that's not shadow. That's actual emotional energy. Okay? So we are responding to vibrations all the time. So whether we decide to be dead, whether we decide to allow messiness, whether we allow ourselves to be greedy, whether I allow myself to focus on consciousness rather than food and exercise, whether I allow myself to focus on the part of me that holds resentment and blames other people, and acknowledge that that's part of the whole dynamic of what my body expresses when I, along the way, decided that what I'm not is fat, then consciousness has some place to expand to. Can we allow flow? Is it safe to allow flow? Is it safe to allow some of our shadow aspects to emerge and be in our consciousness rather than keeping that closet door slammed and nailed and welded shut so that the only time shadow can emerge is when it decides to just break out and surprise the crap out of us, and then we feel completely out of control? Can we allow ease? Can we allow things to be easy? One of the questions in the group today was about that, trying to remember who it was. I think it might have been Jean, one of our new members, who mentioned that she has a hard time letting go of being responsible for the how of things getting done and miracles getting manifested. So can we allow ease? Can we let go of that responsibility? Can we allow silliness that maybe people in our past, maybe people in our present don't approve of? It's all about, are we willing to allow the full experience of our humanity to come to the forefront and be lived like the mystery that it is? I read something beautiful the other day by Matt Licata, whose writings I like very, very much. He's a very deep and wise young man. And his line, I think his opening line was, "You are not a problem to be solved. You are a mystery to be lived." And that really takes care of all of this shadow stuff and all of the ways in which miracles happen, and lets us off the hook of having to be what seems to me superhuman. When we can allow, I'm not a problem to be fixed. I'm just a mystery to be lived. That, to me, that's a complete game changer. So we're looking at how to work with shadow, to embrace it more fully, give it permission to be part of our experience. Say that again. Okay, I sure will. I am not a problem to be solved. I am a mystery to be lived. I really, really love that, because so much of the way we approach ourselves, at least in Western culture, is with this fix-it attitude. Like there's always something about me to be fixed. So what if this whole issue for me with my body, thank God I'm one of the healthiest people around, and I carry a lot more weight than is comfortable for my body. What if that's not a problem to be fixed? What if that's just part of my mystery of living? That maybe I'll never get to fully understand it. Because let's face it, the thrust of it for me has been to overcome it, to fix it, to change it. Oh, Lorraine, I'm glad you're here. Thank you. It's nice to know you are. Sorry your internet connection is a little wonky, but hey, glad you're hanging in there with us. So I'll say it again, because Joan said wow, and I agree, wow. I am not a problem to fix. I am a mystery to be lived. Let that really touch your heart. Let that really touch the place in you that feels like, oh God, I'm never going to be fixed enough. I'm never going to be right enough. I'm never going to be perfect enough. I'm never going to do this well enough. I'm never going to do that well enough. I'm never going to be good enough to get so-and-so's approval. You hear all of the ways in which we reinforce the fact that we are a problem to be fixed? How awful does that feel? I know you do. I know you live in the boonies, Lorraine. I'm glad that you got any connection to be with us. Thank you for hanging in there. So I have a couple of questions here. Stacy posed a question. So I asked people to post questions on the group if they weren't going to be able to be with us. And Stacy's question is this: shadow seems to come up through other people, circumstances, etc., kind of like the spiral path that keeps circling around through the same issues. And her question is, how do I get to the light and release the shadow? Okay, so this gives me an opportunity to talk about the nature of the spiral path, which is that on the spiral path, we do go through the same issues over and over again, but never in the same way, never to the same extent, and the issue itself is never the same, because each time we go through an issue, talking mainly about core issues on the spiral path, we come out of it with more consciousness, either a lot more or a little more consciousness. Hi, Susan. Stuck in line at a store. Okay, well, I'm glad you're here anyway. So I'm referring to a question that Stacy asked about how to get to the light and release the shadow, because her observation is that shadow comes up through other people and circumstances and kind of keeps circling around like the spiral path. So yes, that's true. And so if we recognize that we're going to go through shadow issues on the spiral path this time, the next time, the next time, it doesn't matter that we're not finished. And again, it's not a problem to be fixed. It's a mystery to be lived. So if the issue is, how can I bring more love to my shadow aspect, then each time we encounter it on the spiral path, we're going to be able to bring more love to it, and a little more love to it, and a little more, maybe a lot more love to it this time. And that's not only transformative, it's what we've said about the alchemists of the past who changed lead into gold. It changes fear and resentment into love and acceptance. So Stacy, that's how we get to the light. It's not like we're going to be able to flip a switch and shadow is going to be completely gone and that aspect of us will be flooded with light. Although, hey, anything is possible. The point is that each time we encounter it on a path, because we're triggered by a person or a circumstance, we're going to experience more and more and more light. And I know Stacy's been through some experiences recently that I think you can relate to this, Stacy, with the way that you've handled things, with more strength and more light and more assertiveness and more self-love and better boundaries. So that's how we're looking at that. Sabrina also had a question, and it's a great one. Is anger always an expression of shadow? Bruce says, is it because we need to learn something from circling around? Yes, indeed it is. It just means, hang out on a spiral path. That's what life is. You know how Abraham says you never get it done? That's the nature of the spiral path. So the fact that we circle around through it again doesn't mean I failed. It just means, okay, it's up again. I wonder what I'm going to learn from it this time. And I wonder what I'm going to learn from it this time, meaning I wonder what kind of light will be shed this time. So it's always about bringing more light. So Sabrina's question is anger always an expression of shadow? And the answer is no. The fact of the matter is we are wired for healthy anger. And healthy anger is about knowing when to establish and hold strong boundaries with other people, how to set and hold strong limits with other people. Look, this is my sovereign space. Each of us has a sovereign space, which is you. Okay? And you know what you want inside that space. You know what kind of experiences you want to have, and you know what you want sending out from your space. Ultimately, you're in charge of that. That's the thing you are in charge of. And so anger gives us a message, hey, something's wrong here and I need to do something about it. Now, that's healthy anger. And healthy anger is meant to be felt, you do something about it, and you release it. Okay, that's the natural trajectory of an emotion. It starts, it rises, it peaks, it falls, it dissipates, it's gone. Okay? Anger that we hold on to can definitely become shadow. That's the nature of resentment. It's anger that was meant to be let go, but instead we're hanging on to it like a bitter pill in our mouth that we don't want to swallow. Okay? And it tastes worse and worse, and we have to work harder and harder not to swallow it. Okay, so you feel the difference, Sabrina? So anger is not always an expression of shadow, but it definitely can become shadow when we hold on to it and it becomes resentment. So I think we're just about out of time, but I wonder if anybody has a question or a comment to bring it back around to how can this shadow work help you to become a better manifester of your particular intended miracle? Can you see, after this discussion, is there a little more light shed on how shadow aspects in your unconscious, in that closet, might have an impact on how or if your miracle gets manifested? So, lots of food for thought, and if questions come up after this Facebook Live, post them here, and I'll come back and take a look and try to answer them. So, I'm very glad for those of you who were here. Thank you very much. This is always a great way to get together, and thank you so much for being here. This is Janice Masters, the Shaman Mama from JaniceMasters.com. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Bye.